That's how and Arthur were saying it. Becharon. It's Hebraic translation or transliteration.
Yeah, I prefer the red over the white.
So yeah, I don't say God or Lord. So because I don't.
Okay,
It's a
is it
personal.
bad if I say it?
It's a
No,
personal
that's up to
choice
you.
that she's
You ask.
made. Oh,
You ask
it's
the
a
Creator.
tradition. It's a tradition in Judaism
Yeah.
that they don't say his name because it could invoke his anger if they say it wrong.
Well, I
And
say
there are other thoughts.
It's a respect. It's an
behind that
awe.
too.
When the fear of the Lord is, it's misinterpreted sometimes, but it's like this holy awe.
Mm-hmm.
It's the awe that would send you to your knees if he were before you.
Wow.
That leaves you speechless.
It's wow. Yeah.
And it's
An
personal.
acronym for WOW is worthy
It's
of
personal
worship.
habits in friendship with God
Mm.
that are different from family to family, and we always emphasize that spirit who loves everybody looks on the heart, but man looks and hears on the outward appearance.
Yep.
So if a person, is using standard Christianity words and their heart is calling out, their heart will be heard, and they're not going to be judged for the words that they use. But as you get wiser and wiser, you choose to use I used to say,
So you're like super wise.
No. I'm not.
well, this woman,
Which is why wisdom in itself.
yeah, these people have studied a lot.
I
And
see that.
like
They're
back in the day,
super.
when I was first starting learning, I'm like, I want to call him Yeshua because that's what his mommy called him. I mean, when his mommy was calling him, that's what it sounded like. Yehoshua, Yeshua, come on, come on, come on. I mean, and so like, it's nice to say that word instead of the Jesus word, which came much, much later. And some people feel like the Jesus word is a curse and it's a disrespect. And so, yeah. And people can get really...
I think this is an information overload for her.
Right. No, it's not. It's important. This man has not heard these words before.
It's true. Yeah. So it's
And some people actually divide themselves from others because they don't like to hear those certain words. But it's a house to house and family to family thing.
Yeah.
And we have no condemnation towards anybody. We just like,
I didn't know
the original names.
Yeah.
You pray
Yeah.
and
You ask Abba, that means Daddy. You ask Creator, how he what for you. I don't say Lord because it's the same term as Baal or Baal, Baal. And
Bail me out.
well, you can say that too, but no, it's a false god, and a God, and if I say God, then that could be like any god really, and for me, he is the one. He says, I'm one.
Yeah, I kind of
And
figured
so-
you knew who I was talking to.
Absolutely. He knows it's all our own as we walk and know the Creator more. He reveals himself to us. So, but that's why, and so I just do that.
Continue.
Right. So,
Cool.
chapter 11, and Yahweh Hashem spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the living creatures which you do not eat among the beasts that are on the earth. Whatever has a split hoof, completely divided, chewing the cud among the beasts that you do not eat. Only these you do not eat among those that chew the cud, or those that have a split hoof. The camel, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean to you. And the rabbit, because it chews the cud, but it does not have a split hoof, and it's unclean to you. And the hare. So, okay, question. What's the difference between a rabbit and a hare?
One's faster.
Really?
No, I don't know. It's too bad.
What's the difference between a rabbit and a hare?
I don't know.
I don't know. Roll
Hair
on.
is much larger.
Roll
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
Go.
We got tiny
okay,
bunch.
so because it chews the cud, but it does not have a split hoof.
They're
It is
both
unclean.
rodents.
The pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, yet it does not chew the cud, it is unclean to you. Their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you do not touch. They are unclean to you. These you do eat of all that are in the waters. Any one that has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas or in the rivers, that you do eat. No catfish. But all
Catfish, that's good.
that have not fins and
We got
scales
fins.
in the seas and in the rivers, all that move in the waters, or any living creature which is in the waters, they are an abomination to you, that do not have fins. They are an abomination to you. Of their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you do, of their carcass, and their carcasses you abominate. What's that mean? What does somebody else have
Like
said?
cast away, like done with it, dead to me.
An abomination.
You don't have to.
Yeah,
hold that
keep
up
going,
because
keep
he
going.
can't. It's in his eyes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Go. Read.
And these, what does
What
abominate
verse?
mean?
What verse is that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to get behind you guys.
You just got to make a note and then
We're on
look
12,
back
15.
later.
I'm sorry. Leviticus
We have to
12,
go through
verse
Leviticus
13,
Numbers
11.
14.
She's saying keep it
Well,
moving.
verse 12.
No time to-
All right.
Let me see what it says here.
Oh, maybe abomination.
Carry on.
These you do abominate among the birds.
Yeah.
They are not eaten. They are an abomination.
Or in mine, in the Hebrew names version, it says, whatever has no fins nor scales in the waters, that is an abomination to you.
Basically dead
So
to
it's something you reject.
So what does verse 13 read?
These you shall detest among
Okay.
the birds.
Mine says abominate. So
Dead
among
to
the
you.
birds.
So
So
basically
you
means that it
hate.
shall be an abomination to you.
Okay.
Don't
Like
eat
the
it.
abominable
Period.
snowman. You
It
don't
means
wanna
they're
meet that
detestable.
He's not-
Move on.
He's not adorable.
guy. Yeah.
So, and the hawk and the falcon after its kind, every raven after its
You
kind,
read next.
and the ostrich, and the nighthawk, and the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, and the little owl, and the fisher owl, and the great owl, and the white owl, and the pelican, and the carrion vulture, and the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, and the bat, all flying insects that creep on all fours, is an abomination to you. Only these you do eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours. Those which have jointed legs above their feet, which leap on the earth, these of them you do eat: the locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, and the grasshopper after its kind. But all other flying insects which have 4 feet is an abomination to you. And by these you are made unclean. Anyone touching the carcass of any of them is unclean until evening. Pass.
Let's
I
eat
can't read
grasshoppers.
David,
Yeah, I'm done.
can you read?
Let's eat grasshoppers.
Yeah, I don't want to eat grasshoppers.
I want to eat grasshoppers.
No.
Okay, what verse?
Where'd you leave off?
25. My eyes are burning.
11:25.
25.
Sorry, listening.
And
That is
whoever
so funny.
carries any part of their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. Every animal that parts the hoof, but is not cloven-footed, or does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Everyone who touches them shall be unclean. And all that walk on their paws among the animals that go on all fours are unclean to you. No kitties and no tigers.
No.
Whoever
no more
touch-
Chinese food.
Whoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until the evening. And he who carries their carcass shall wash their clothes and be unclean until the evening. They are unclean to you. And these are unclean to you among the swarming things that swarm on the ground: the mole rat, the mouse, the great lizard of any kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all their swarm, among all that swarm. The sand lizard and the chameleon. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until the evening. And anything on which any of them falls when they are dead shall be unclean, whether it is an article of wood or a garment or a skin or a sack or any article that is used for any purpose. It must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until the evening. Then it shall be clean. And if any of them falls into the earthenware vessel, all that is in it shall be unclean, and you shall break it. Any food in it that could be eaten, on which water comes, shall be unclean. I'm gonna bring
Yeah, I was just thinking about that for you.
the light down here.
Yeah.
It's a little bit dark. Shall be unclean. Na.
35.
35, thank you. And everything on which any part of their carcass falls shall be unclean, whether oven or stove. It shall be broken in pieces. They are unclean and shall remain unclean for you. Nevertheless, a spring or a cistern holding water shall be clean, but whoever touches a carcass in them shall be unclean. And if any part of their carcass falls upon any seed grain that is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed, and any part of their carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. And if any animal which you may eat dies, whoever touches its carcass shall be unclean until the evening. And whoever eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. And whoever carries the carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. Every swarming thing that swarms on the ground is detestable. It shall not be eaten. Whatever goes on its belly and whatever goes on all fours, or whatever has many feet, any swarming thing that swarms on the ground, you shall not eat, for they are detestable. You shall not make yourselves detestable with any swarming thing that swarms, and you shall not defile yourself with them and become unclean through them. For I am Yahweh your Elohim. Consecrate yourselves therefore and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourselves with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground, for I am Yahweh who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim, your strongest spirit. You shall therefore be holy, like I am holy. This is the law about beast and bird and every living creature that moves through the waters and every creature that swarms on the ground, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, between the living creature that may be eaten and the living creature that may not be eaten. The Lord Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, a woman conceives and bears a male child. Then she shall be untouchable, unclean 7 days. As at the time of her menstruation she shall be untouchable. And on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. Then she shall continue for 33 days in the blood of her purifying. She shall not touch anything holy, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying are complete. But if she bears a female child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her menstruation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying for 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are completed, whether for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting a lamb a year old for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering. And he shall offer it before Yahweh and make atonement for her. Then she shall be clean from the flow of her blood. This is the law for her who bears a child, either male or female. And if she cannot afford a lamb, then she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be made clean. I make a statement. God says that when a girl child is born, she is to spend 80 days tender and close to her mama. When a boy child is born, it's only 40 days.
Right.
But a girl child is 80 days, training the female human being that she's called to be connected with flesh and the comfort that a woman needs in the way that she's got to go forward in life. Beautiful thing. I love Leviticus 12. It's so groovy.
Very good.
The Lord spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, when a person has on the skin of his body a swelling or an eruption or a spot, and it turns into a case of leprous disease on the skin of his body, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priest. And the priest shall examine the diseased area on the skin of his body, and if the hair in the diseased area has turned white, and the disease appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a case of leprous disease. When the priest has examined him, he shall pronounce him unclean. But if the spot is white in the skin of his body and appears no deeper than the skin, and the hair has not turned white, the priest shall shut up the diseased person for 7 days, and the priest shall examine him on the seventh day. And if in his eyes the disease is checked, and the disease has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up for another 7 days, and the priest shall examine him again on the seventh day. And if the diseased area has faded and the disease has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It's only an eruption, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the eruption spreads in the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall appear again before the priest, and the priest shall look. And if the eruption has spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, untouchable. It is a leprous disease. When the man is afflicted with a leprous disease, he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall look. And if there is a white swelling in the skin that has turned the hair white, if there is raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic leprous disease in the skin of his body, speaking of eczema and psoriasis. And the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not shut him up, for as he is unclean. And if the leprous disease breaks out in the skin, so that the leprous disease covers all the skin of the diseased person from the head to foot, so far as the priest can see, then the priest shall look, and if the leprous disease has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him clean of the disease. It has all turned white, and he is clean. But when raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall examine the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. Raw flesh is unclean, for it is a leprous disease. But if the raw flesh recovers and turns white again, then he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall examine him. And if the disease has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce the diseased person clean. He is clean. It's great to do a study on spirit realm and spirits of affliction around this particular stuff. And I ain't going to go into it, but it's groovy.
Yeah.
If there is in the skin of one's body a boil, and it heals, and in the place of the boil there comes a white swelling or a reddish white spot, then it shall be shown to the priest, and the priest shall look, and if it appears deeper than the skin, and his hair is turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a case of leprous disease that has broken out on the boil. But if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it spreads in the skin, shut me up 7 days, man. Come on. And if it spreads in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a disease. But if the spot remains in one place and does not spread, it is the scar of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or when the body has a burn on its skin, and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a spot, reddish white or white, the priest shall examine it. And if the hair in the spot has turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin, then it is a leprous disease. It has broken out in the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a case of leprous disease. But if the priest examines it, and there is no white hair in the spot, and it is no deeper than the skin, but has faded, the priest shall shut him up for 7 days, and the priest shall examine him on the seventh day. If it is spreading in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a case of leprous disease. But if the spot remains in one place and does not spread in the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is a scar on the burn. When a man or woman has a disease on the head or the beard, the priest shall examine the disease, and if it appears deeper than the skin and the hair is yellow and thin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an itch, a leprous disease of the head or the beard.
What verse?
31. And if the priest examines the itching disease, and it appears no deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up the person with the itching disease for 7 days. And on the seventh day, the priest shall examine the disease. If the itch has not spread, and there is no yellow hair, and the itch appears to be no deeper than the skin, then he shall shave himself, but the itch he shall not shave, and the priest shall shut up the person with the itching disease for another 7 days. And on the seventh day, the priest shall examine the itch, and if the itch has not spread in the skin, and it appears to be no deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the itch spreads in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him, and if the itch has spread in the skin, the priest need not seek for the yellow hair. He is unclean.
You got herpes.
But if in his eyes the itch is unchanged, and black hair has grown in it, the itch is healed, and he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or a woman has spots on the skin of the body, white spots. The priest shall look, and if the spots on the skin of the body are of a dull white, it is leukoderma that has broken out in the skin. He is clean. If a man's hair falls out from his head, he is bald. He is clean. And if a man's hair falls out from his forehead, he has baldness of the forehead. He is clean. But if there is on the bald head or the bald forehead a reddish white diseased area, it is a leprous disease breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. Then the priest shall examine him, and if the diseased swelling is reddish white on his bald head or his bald forehead, like the appearance of leprous disease on the skin of the body, he is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest must pronounce him unclean. His disease is on his head. The leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes and let the hair of his head hang loose. And he shall cover his upper lip and cry out, unclean, unclean.
So did you have a question?
I was just gonna ask, what do they do with him? And then he explained it.
He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. When there is a case of leprous disease in a garment,
Basically,
whether
don't make anyone else sick.
whether a woman or woolen or
There's plague
linen,
control.
yeah, quarantine laws.
Yeah.
That's where they actually come from.
Yep.
Is Leviticus.
Yeah, none of these diseases. In warp or woof of linen or wool, or in a skin or anything made of skin, if the disease is greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the skin, or the warp or woof of any article made of skin, it is a case of leprous disease, and it shall be shown to the priest, and the priest shall examine the disease and shut up that which has the disease for 7 days. Then he shall examine the disease on the 7th day. If the disease has spread in the garment, in the warp or the woof, or in the skin, whatever be the use of the skin, the disease is a persistent leprous disease. It is unclean, and he shall burn the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or the wool, or the linen, or any article made of skin, like leather, that is diseased, for it is a persistent leprous disease. It shall be burned with fire.
Here it says a destructive mildew. It doesn't just say leprous
Yeah.
disease.
Cool.
This one actually says
And
it's a
actually,
destructive mildew.
yeah. And
Groovy,
that'll be
groovy.
coming because they'll tear down the house.
Right, the mildew section's coming up.
Right.
Okay,
So
here we go.
It's the same.
All right, this is a different translation. And if the priest examines, and if the disease has not spread in the garment, the warp, or the woof, or any article made of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing in which is the disease, and he has shut it up for 7 days. And the priest will examine the diseased thing after it's been washed, and if the appearance of the diseased area is not changed, though the disease has not spread, it's still unclean. You must burn it in the fire, whether the rot is on the back or the front. So it does sound like mildew. But if the priest examines, and if the diseased area has faded after it's been washed, he shall tear out of the garment, or the skin, or the warp, or the woof, and it appears again in the garment, in the warp, or the woof, or the article made of skin. It is spreading. You shall burn with fire whatever has the disease. But the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or any article made of skin from which the disease departs when you have washed it, shall then be washed a second time and be clean. This is the law for a case of leprous disease in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or the woof, or any article made of skin, to determine whether it is clean or unclean.
So,
We have to go.
okay.
I have to work in the morning.
Uh-huh.
What time?
Yeah, and I've got
I worked at 7 this morning too.
I've got a 4:45 wake up for a 6:15 dialysis treatment.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. So you gotta go too.
What time is it?
So you wanna
Not to break it up.
yeah.
But we didn't get to go to
10:45?
Leviticus 15. I wanted to read Leviticus 15.
Yes, it is 10:45.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
surprised the other guys aren't back yet.
Can we get going?
Yeah, we should.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
should. Okay.
Unless let me know.
Do you have
Okay.
the other bottles? Like,
Yeah.
fill them up for next
And that
Oh,
Hang on,
sure.
mold
For
and
next
mildew?
time?
Yes, I will go in and get those empty bottles and come out with a bag that I can drop all these
And I'm
into.
gonna start riding with Shauna.
Never mind.
It
Carry
has
them out.
to be
Easy, easy.
All right, David.
Glazzies.
David.
Gas.
And our
I'm
top.
gonna start riding with
This one
Shauna.
for that.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay,
too.
well, I have to hook you up with a bike. There's two options.
Suzanne,
Okay.
it was nice to meet you.
Whichever
I
one goes
finally got your
faster.
name. Sorry, Arthur.
It's okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you
good
for
to meet
sharing
you, too.
too.
Pleasure.
Come back again if you can.
I
We'll
love
be here till
your
Monday night.
I love your story
Yeah.
of how you guys met.
Yeah,
It's
that was an
amazing.
awesome story
Yeah.
how you guys met. It was cool. Renaissance fair.
That was the short
Basically,
version.
right?
Aw.
Isn't it a Renaissance fair? That
Yeah.
Yeah.
Renaissance.
We don't
My
go
son
anymore.
used to go.
You don't go anymore.
No. It's full of darkness.
Absolutely. Yes.
It is full of darkness.
But
However,
that was an
it
awesome
wasn't.
story.
Because Abba sent you there to be light, to bring light, and to meet each other to be a bigger light.
Like, no one's ran to my
Amen.
arms
Yeah,
except for
that's
my
right.
son.
Dark thing sometimes.
That's the only person that's ever ran to my arms.
He created it all. Nothing is out of his control.
You guys have a good night.
You too. Good
Thank you.
night.
Thank
So
you for
nice
coming.
meeting you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
Aw.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Um,
I keep reading too, but we gotta get Shauna home.
yeah, that's cool.
He's like,
It
Leviticus.
really just sounded like a whole. All right,
well, it is.
personal intake.
It is Leviticus. So this is not a good place. Well, yes, it is. It's an amazing
All I
place
want
to
to
start.
say is,
All of it's
it
amazing.
sounded like a whole bunch of set of rules of like what you should and shouldn't do about eating.
Well,
Like,
at
eating
this
habits on the earth.
At this point, it is, but there's this much to read, and we read that much. So you just happen to jump in the section that talked about what you do when you eat, when you make an offering.
It's very informational.
It's very informational. It's
It
true.
really was.
Yeah.
Like, Tiki crawly, don't do. Birds in the air, split hooves. I don't know. That was a lot to take in.
So what is your religion background? So you said you're praying to Yahweh.
Who?
You were telling me in there you're praying to deity. You're like, God, you said you'd provide. How do you know he said that? So where do you know that?
Something about how he take care of birds,
Amen.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If he cares about the little birds, he cares
Yeah,
about
like I just felt like if he's gonna take care of those guys,
you. Mm-hmm.
like he said in the scripture, and he's gonna take care of me. And really, like, it's all a measure of faith. Like,
Amen.
after every time that I'm like, I know worrying's not a good thing to do, but like, I'm going through a huge spiritual battle right now. A lot of people don't know about. Like, I'm fighting to try to get my son with me. I've never had custody. Like,
Wow.
his mom's in and out of jail, prostituting. Like, my dad and my stepmom have him right now. And you know that they're having him call me by my first name. Oh, that's
I'm sure
devastating. It's
Yeah.
devastating.
Wow.
But you know what God
I'm
said to
so
me?
sorry.
God
No.
said, "Go with that. Have him saying your name so much that okay, call him Daddy." That's what God said to me, because God's like, don't fight these people, because the more you fight it, the more they're gonna try to fight it. Go with it. Just
Yeah.
go with it. Like, whatever. And like, and I'm a non-offending father.
Thank you. Oh, that's nice.
Like, my son was never taken from me. It's just been like, but every like journey that I accomplished, like literally I was homeless. I got this place. It was all God. I met Stephen David. And then like when I meet these other pastors, like, don't backslide just because something bad happened to you. Like, man, I was hit by a car. You think this is going to make me backslide? But it's like, every time when I'm worried, afterwards, he's like, I feel like Jesus is there, like my homeboy, like, I told you I had it, bro.
Right.
And you're
Right.
like, yeah, I didn't believe
Right.
as strongly as I should have. And he's like,
So
the
it's
whole
like building
time.
muscles.
Yeah.
Like when you're working out,
yeah,
you
he's
gotta-
like,
You think you're not going to be able to pump that extra 10 pounds, but
Yeah,
then the
and-
more you do it,
like I said to her, is like relationship. Like, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a heavy Bible reader, but I am a
Yes.
heavy prayer. Like, I'm a super BA prayer. Like, when you say somebody that prays, like, I don't do nothing without
listen,
praying.
you can't
Nothing.
have been
Nothing.
homeless in some of your stories and not be a prayer.
I mean,
You
the real
cannot
deal. Like,
have
Mm.
slept outside with nothing,
Wow, that's
nothing under
feels
you
like
and
nobody.
nothing over
No, I
you
had
and not be a
I had an
prayer.
air mattress. It was
I didn't even
$7
have,
at
I was on
Walmart.
concrete. I was on concrete out in Manatee under a ledge. I was being poured on rain.
Yeah, bridges
You-
are the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't walk to a bridge because my ex-boyfriend did this to me and I couldn't even get that far. So you can't be homeless. And I was homeless for over a year.
It sucks.
And
I was homeless almost
literally,
pretty much greater part of all last year.
yeah.
I mean, I was homeless 4 separate times. That means I had a place, lost it,
Yeah.
had a place, lost it, had a place, lost it.
Yeah.
Like,
That's hard.
that's devastating.
It is.
4 separate times, that just makes, that,
Right.
boy, God made me a strong person.
It makes us, because the book of James in the Bible
Yeah.
says that these trials, consider them pure joy because they test our faith,
Yeah.
and the testing of our faith develops perseverance in us, and perseverance has to finish its work so that we can be mature and complete,
believe
lacking
that.
nothing. And
You
so
There was a time that literally I prayed on the outside of Walmart for God to just kill me.
yeah, take
Like,
me.
so I was like,
Right.
because I was too much of a puss to do it myself.
Me
like,
too.
To kill myself. Like, every time I got down to it, I was like, I can't really do this.
Yeah, me
But
too.
like, I prayed to him. I was like, God, please kill me. Like,
So do you know how many people in the Bible have prayed that? A lot. One of the guys, Job, you may have heard of Job. He's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
He said,
I
I
read that whole
cursed
book.
the day I was born.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, I cursed my being conceived.
Yeah, that's what
He's
I
like,
literally said those words.
Yeah.
Like, why did you even
Right.
let me be on this earth? I
Right.
never asked for this. I didn't
Right.
want to be this. I didn't.
Maybe we did. Maybe because we were spirit beings when he created everything first. What I read, I can be wrong. I think we were spirit beings when he created. And then he put our spirits into our mother's womb when our mom and dad met and she conceived. And then we grew flesh on our spirit. And so maybe he knew, because the Bible says he knows the end from the beginning, because he knows everything. He knew those who were going to choose him
Yeah,
in
but
the
I'm saying,
flesh.
like,
So maybe in our spirit, before we were over flesh, we were like, no, I'll choose you. Even though, and you're like, so maybe somehow in these little spirit whatevers, we're like, send me down there, y'all. Send me down there. Maybe. I'm just saying. I could be way wrong. I could be way out there.
I mean,
I'm usually way out there.
here's the thing, like, I never, if he knew
But I
that the
betcha.
devil was bad, why even send him here?
He
Like,
created the devil.
that's what I'm saying.
He
Like,
created, look, we
but I
have
didn't
to have
ask to
that.
be created at all. I didn't ask for that.
So,
I wasn't like,
right.
yo, I
Yeah.
want to be created. No, I'd rather just went right to heaven. I would rather died at like 4 years old,
Or
go straight
just,
to heaven.
well, you would have been created. So, or maybe just never even have been.
Exactly. Like,
I get that. I can relate.
I didn't predetermine this. He predetermined this. And like, that's
So,
what's
but
hard for me to deal
He
with.
also
Like,
knew. He knows the end of all things, and every end of every choice, every decision we could ever make. So, like, say you're at a rodeo, and you could go down these 5 different paths, but you only choose one, but you have these 5. But
Yeah.
he knows the end of every single path that you could take.
yeah.
He knows what will happen at the end. He also knows at the end of that path, there's all these other paths. He knows the end of all those. At this one, and it just keeps like going.
Yeah.
He knows all that. And possibly he knew.
But I
You-
didn't want to get the chance for a internal damnation.
I
I didn't want that chance.
Well, you don't have to.
I know, but
So
I didn't
that's what
even
I'm
want
saying.
that option. I didn't even want that to be a
Maybe it isn't an option. Maybe you go through all this to make you stronger
exactly.
because you're
but I'm
never
saying,
going to
like,
choose that
I
eternal
didn't
damnation.
ask for the choice. I just wanted to be. I just want to be like.
What do you
good
think
things.
wanting to be is? What do you,
I didn't even ask that.
okay, so what do you think it is? What do you think this eternal bliss or just normalcy or happiness of life? What do you think it is? Do you think it's money? Do you
I
think
feel
it's
like
having your son?
no. I
do you think
think
it's having a
I
home?
think that good wouldn't feel so good if it wasn't for bad.
Exactly. So when you said, why did he even put Satan here? So we could know what good
With this, yeah, but I'm saying.
You said it. I
yeah,
didn't
but
know.
I'm saying.
Yeah, let's go. That's a great conversation. They should come back and you should come back and we should pick it up.
You are all about like keeping the ball rolling. I love that.
She's a teacher.
She's the engineer teacher of children.
I do that
Making
in the
bombs
classroom.
and science projects.
Would you make a tray?
Yes, I'll take it.
And I have to go pee again before we
All right.
do this jaunt.
Let's get rolling. Get rolling. Get the toilet paper ready for it. Come on.
And I hope that seat isn't gonna
Hurt?
Yeah.
It might.
Oh yeah, because it's come up. Yeah, I won't do that.
You must have been high. Who are you to point the finger? Ah. Oh man. Are you sure you brought the guitar in?
What?
Ah. I was like, are you sure you brought the guitar in?
Well, they did an operation on my arm. It's called a fistula operation. And what that does is it causes the veins in my arm to be extra big, right? They're thicker. The veins in my arm are thicker, and the walls of the veins are thicker. So 3 times a week, somebody comes along and they slip a very large needle into my arm, and that's attached to for a second, and it's attached to a little plastic tube, and that little plastic tube gets connected to the machine, and then there's actually a place where it goes back in. So there's a going out and a coming back in. So I'm hooked up to the machine, and it takes just a little trickle of blood. It doesn't take like all my bloodstream. So I mean, it's like picture like a giant river, right? Picture a big river, and then you're making like a little tributary that comes off of the river, right? And you're taking a little bit of that river and you're cleaning it, and then you're putting it back in. Okay, so it takes a long time to actually clean a large volume of blood, because they don't have like all my blood flowing through the machine. There's no way to do that. So I sit next to the machine for about 3 hours and 15 minutes, And what it does is it just pulls the little H2O, the water molecules, out of my bloodstream. Like when you chug like a half a gallon of water, you drink a pint of water, what happens is that water goes right into your bloodstream very quickly, and then your kidneys just filter out the water and they dump it into your bladder. And that's the normal way to get rid of water. So when the kidneys are not functioning properly, your body actually loads up with water primarily as a problem. And so if I haven't had dialysis for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, my breathing starts getting rough because my lungs start filling up with water and I can't breathe. I can't get good
So
oxygen.
you not piss anymore?
No, hardly at all. Just a little bit.
You don't pee anymore?
Like during the day, I will pee like a cup and a half or so. Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's great because I don't have to trot off to the bathroom all the time. But one of the things that I miss is just like peeing like a racehorse, because there's nothing going into my bladder. The water in my system is being pulled out by the machine. And when they're done, they've got like 2.5 gallons of water that they've taken out of my body. Just pure water.
That's just on one day.
Oh, in just one day, and the machine's distilling it out. And I mean, I feel like at first when I went on dialysis, I'm kind of like, I'm asking some people like, does this mean I'm going to die soon? I had to get this whole learning curve. And they're like, no, people go on dialysis for 34, 40 years and do fine. Some people get kidney transplants.
How many years have you been on that?
Just 2. Yeah, it's just been 2 years. So it's been a whole educational process.
And it's been 3 days a week for 2 years?
Yeah. So I am now.
He said at first it was a valve right to his heart.
Yeah. When they put me in the hospital and they discovered that my kidneys weren't working, it's wild. They know how to slide these tubes in and actually poke them right into the 2 major arteries on the top of your heart. And so you got these tubes that come out through a little slit in my skin. There's actually 2 plastic tubes. It doesn't bleed at all because there's very little, blood vessels here. And there's these 2 little tubes that are all wrapped up under my shirt like that for the first 5-8 months. And that was actually easier because I sit down in the chair and they just take these other tubes and they hook them up so they don't poke nothing in my arm. But then they call that a catheter. But the catheter is dangerous because you can't swim if the slit in your skin starts getting infected. They have to shut everything down and take care of you and look out for MRSA and all that type of stuff. So they shift you over to this fistula strong vein thing in your arm. But when you sit down, they got to go poke these big needles. And, and I mean, I'm used to it now. I'm just every time it happens.
You wouldn't have that. Is that what keeps you alive, the dialysis?
Yeah. I mean, I talked to this girl, the woman, she was a grown-up woman, out on Sarasota Beach. And we were all chit-chatting. She said, "You're on dialysis?" She's like, "Wow." She said, "My father was a Vietnam vet. He was on dialysis for years. And he just got sick of being on dialysis, so he just didn't get any treatments anymore." And she said in about 2 weeks, he was dead. Just, he actually suffocated to death. He couldn't breathe anymore. And he just he just died. Because there's all this overloaded water in the system.
That's what's keeping you alive.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I really never asked you that.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I just was
Yeah, and that's I love telling the story because I feel like people in the dialysis clinics
you have a good attitude.
didn't tell me the story so I could understand what was going on fast enough. I was freaked out and scared for way too many months. Nobody sat down and coached me here's what's going on. Here's your life expectancy. Here's the kind of stuff you can do. They didn't.
Must be wild. Did they tell you your life expectancy?
No, they don't make evaluations like that. But they give you, case histories. They tell you about people's lives who've been on dialysis. And now I'm up on the web where I'm checking out people that are on dialysis and they're running corporations and they're doing special things and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, this is cool, man. I'm in that crowd. We can do this. And I mean, Father promised me that he will heal my kidneys through riding the bicycle. And I don't know what that means exactly.
Well, he told me he didn't want you driving. He wanted you riding a bike.
Right. And he also told me that he didn't want me to get a kidney transplant, because plenty of people ask me, like, what about a kidney transplant, man? I can give you one of my kidneys and da-da-da. And I'm like, well, God. And he's like, no, steady as she goes, because I'm giving you a mission to these dialysis clinics to hang out with these people and just be who you are. And then when they check you out on the web, they can see all the God stuff and the happy, positive things. And so I know that he's thrown me in those places partly as a mission to both the people that work in the clinics and the people that are being treated there. A lot of the people that go into the dialysis clinics are like, they get carted out of nursing homes. They're in wheelchairs. They kind of have sad little lives and stuff. And I can sit next to somebody and say,
I could say that, man. You're in a nursing home, because I work in nursing
Sure.
homes. And all
Yeah,
that. They go in better shape, but because their loved ones, or for whatever reason, nobody takes it, they deteriorate in a nursing home. So could you imagine having that, like, you have nobody and you're going through that
right.
every day, and you're like, you're old.
And so I love sitting next to somebody and saying, hey, man, where are you from? What's your favorite thing? Where do you like to go? Yeah. And so anyhow, I mean, that's my dialysis world. So I got a mission to rehab centers and dialysis clinics.
I already had some for the rice. The rice was good. I love white rice.
Well, what?
I love white rice.
Good.
Just eat that plain.
White rice and soy sauce and a little
Yeah, I do like that.
little hot mustard.
I like that with soy sauce and an egg. Fried egg.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Like
When I don't want to cook anything, or I don't know what to eat, that's just what I make really quick.
Beef stew over white rice.
Yeah, beef stew's good too.
Over the white rice.
I haven't made that in a long time. I like chicken stew too.
Bring some of the other house.
All right, I need to go to sleep. I got my alarm's going off in 4.5 hours.
Alright, well, don't call me in 4.5 hours.
Okay, I won't.
Peace
I
out.
won't answer anyway.
It ain't work day. It ain't a work day.
Okay.
Oh, is the light still on in my workshop, or did I turn it off?
Do you think they give you?
It's off, but the.
You think they'll- You think they give you a next day appointment? Or do they make you wait?
I don't know, but they're very specific. It's every 15 minutes. So they make it very specific.
Oh, you mean? Oh, you could even do it like the same day. Oh, it's every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not
That's
bad.
if they have an opening.
They should have
Who
just
knows
looked me.
more about it?
They should have looked up my number, because they would have it. They could see it. I gave them a
You
code
still
number.
gotta go down there.
Yeah, you go down there, you sit down, they do the fingerprints. It's
literally
fun.
doesn't even take 10 minutes.
Right, it's about 5
It's
minutes.
fast.
Oh, no, I don't care.
It's like if you do this.
Yeah,
You ever been to
That's what I
jail?
do for my job. They do all.
Well, you never been to
The
jail,
four
but I'm
fingers,
saying
they
like
do the
in
four-
jail, it's just like that.
They do the fold the thumbs and then.
Yeah,
one.
both hands.
All right.
And the-
God bless you.
All right.
All
Glory,
right,
glory.
chill. Peace out.
Glory, glory.
All right, give me 5.
All right,
All right.
Happy New
Oh, we
Year.
gotta Happy New Year, you're funny.
Yeah, man. Every night is Happy New Year for me.
God bless your heart, Dave, man.
I'm telling you,
You are just off the hook. You are off the hook with your attitude.
well, I'm still freaking alive, man. This whole, I mean,
know, but you
this
know
whole
what?
blood
I-
machine
no.
things is
No, I didn't.
kind of
you know what?
freaky,
I never
but
ask
I'm like,
people- I never ask people their business.
I'm still alive.
I don't ask questions because I don't like to pry. Ministering is something else, but I don't like to. But I was curious.
Good.
I was curious,
I
so
like
then
it when
decided
people are
to
curious.
ask. I figured I think I could ask you anything,
Yeah.
but I just really wanted to know. And I was saying, and I said to myself, I did ask myself one day, I said, "What's the analysis?" I said, I wonder if that's what's good. And then you said,
Yepper.
you got another 20 years ahead of you, for another 30, 40, 50 years.
Well, yeah. Oh my gosh, this thing is still going. That's
That's where you're going
crazy.
tomorrow? Huh?
Huh.
That's where you're going tomorrow?